Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to 3 Zen. Hope everyone's enjoying the holiday today, Martin Luther King Day. There's been a lot in the news recently about Notams, notice to airmen. I don't buy into Buttigieg's notice to air missions. That's a load of crap. Anyway, Notams. More often than not, we would look at the Notams when we went out to fly, and everything was usually pretty straightforward. I don't know if I ever saw anything in the 18 years I flew in the Air Force that I either didn't know or something that caught me off guard. But it does happen, it can happen. And that's why we check them as a matter of our pre flight. So, this story involves two first assignment IPs, or FAPEs, young guys, young instructors. And for purpose of the story, I think I will call them Bozo number 1 and Bozo number 2. And as the story evolves, you'll begin to understand how I came up with the names. So anyway, Bozo number 1 had just received orders for a change of assignment, permanent change of assignment. And he's going to be heading up to Loring, Maine to fly tankers. So this one weekend, they get an airplane, they check out an airplane, and they're going to go up to have a look around to see what it's going to be like living in Loring, Maine. So they get into Loring Friday afternoon, and I've never been there, but I wouldn't envision that it would take too long to get a feel for the place. So they, as we were typical to do, probably went over to the O Club Friday night, and then Saturday morning decided to get out of Dodge. So they were going to head down to Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. Okay, fine. So they get in a jet and they fire it up, and off they go. Check the Notams? In retrospect, no. So off they go. Now, we didn't have the range to make it from Bangor, Maine, or Loring Air Force Base to Maine to Tyndall. We had to stop en route. Usually in a 38, we could make, 500 miles on a cross country. Comfortable. I've done 700 coming back from LA with a 150 knot tailwind, but that was rare. So anyway, these guys are heading south. I don't remember where they planned to stop, maybe Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, which would be about midway. That's where I'd guess. So anyway, they take off and they get up to altitude, and they get a call from air traffic control. It says, "Say guys, by the way, are you aware that Langley is closed today for an air show or something or another?" Well, no. Where would they have found out about that? Maybe the Notams? Okay, fine. So they decide, okay, that's not a big deal. We'll just drop into McGuire. Well, McGuire is closed for runway work. Okay. How about Dover Air Force Base? Well, Dover was closed too for another reason or another. How about Andrews? Andrews in Washington, D.C. was what they call PPR, prior permission required to go in there. With the president's airplane there, they like to control the traffic in and out and so forth. So that was shut. Now they're starting to scramble because, in all this time, they're drilling along south at 0.9 Mach, 9 miles a minute. So they're scrambling through their maps to find out where they can go. And as they call up and check these bases, they're all closed for one reason or another. Either runway maintenance or PPR or, in one case, an air show. Another base might have had a conference going on. They closed for that one. So anyway, they end up finally discovering that they can get into either Shaw or Myrtle Beach, one of those two, I can't remember, down in South Carolina. Meanwhile, they're doing what we call a cruise climb up into the mid-40s to conserve gas and stretch out the range. So they finally get a clearance to land at, like I said, Shaw or Myrtle Beach. I don't remember which one now. Really doesn't make any difference with regard to the story. And they essentially glide into the base. When they land, they had about 200 pounds of fuel remaining. which isn't very much. And you also have to consider those gauges at the time were analog gauges. So they could be off 100 pounds, and that would be within the limits, the acceptable limits of the fuel gauge. So anyway, these two bozos, I've felt it before. We made it. Yeah. Damn good aviators we are. So they taxi in, they refuel, and I guess as they were refueling, the refueler's eyes just kept getting wider and wider as he watched the amount of gas that went into the airplane. So they hop in the airplane and fire it up. Now they're going to Tyndall. Well, now Tyndall from Shaw or Myrtle Beach is hardly any distance at all. It's nothing. So they get down to Tyndall. It's Saturday afternoon, quiet at the base, and they've got bags of gas. They just got heaps of gas, and they decide to put on a little bit of an air show, impromptu air show, a beat up. So they come down the runway, they pitch out, come around final, and then touch and go, light the burners, level off at maybe 50 feet, smoking down the runway, and they do the atomic close. Go wah, up like this, snap it over, come around, and then come back around, and another touch and go, dusting off the runway. This time they go the other way or whatever. Anyway, these two guys are out there just having a ball, beating the hell out of this airfield. And then they finally get down to maybe 800 pounds of gas, which we normally land with. And they decide to have a full stop. They taxi in and go into crew rest. Meanwhile, there's a supervisor of flying down there who had been a 38 IP at Laughlin. And he sees these guys shining their ass. There's no other word for it, no other expression for it. So he finds out they're from Vance, and he calls back to the duty, the SOF on duty, the supervisor of flying on duty, monitoring weekend cross countries. He calls back to him to talk with him. Well, it just so happened that the squadron commander was in the building at the time. Remo the Magnificent is what we called him, because he ran the squadron like a three-ring circus. But that's for another video of its own. So they call back, and Remo answers the phone. And SOF says, when did you start authorizing these dust-off closed pattern? Remo says, what do you mean? He said, well, these guys were leveling off about 50 feet, 100 or 100 feet, 50 feet, or whatever it was, dusting off the runway and then using the burners, pulling up into a Yaha atomic closed. Okay, fine. That's not normally the way we flew the airplane. On occasion we would. Why? Well, because we couldn't. But anyway, that was the wrong guy to drop the dime on. Remo didn't take prisoners like that. So Monday morning rolls around, and these two bozos show up for duty, and they get summoned to the office. And Remo says, so you want to tell us what happened? You want to tell me what happened, what that was all about on Saturday? Well, Bozo 1 and Bozo 2 thinks he's referring to the leg from Bangor, from Loring to Shaw. So they said, well, sir, when we checked the Notams, right, we didn't see where these bases were closed to the extent they were. So we ended up having to fly all the way down to Shaw or Myrtle Beach, whichever one it was. And that's why we were low on gas. Well, that wasn't what Remo was talking about at all. He wanted to know why they were beating the hell out of Tyndall. But anyway, at that point, he kind of cranks his chair back. He said, well, go ahead and tell me about it. And they went through each base they went to and why, or looked at, and why it was closed, this, that, and the other. Well, anyway, when all was said and done, they both got about a week feet on the ramp to think about their indiscretions and think more about it. And that's one of the worst things you could do to us, is ground us for a week. Although it wasn't a formal grounding, they just found little things for them to do around the squadron, like check grade books, perhaps, or whatever. Bozo 1, indeed, got his assignment to the tanker. And when I got down to Randolph for for my follow-on assignment to that, I later heard where he had been caught in a compromising position with a male boom operator on the tanker. And in 1979, 1980, they kind of frowned on that. His timing was off. Today it'd probably be okay. But anyway, not back in 79 or 80. And he ended up going to Leavenworth for a few years. I don't know what the length of his assignment. Bozo II came back, and after his Feet on the Ramp tour, picked up as an IP where he was, and then sometime a little later ended up getting his name in lights again. And I'll share that story with you here in another video coming pretty soon. So that's one of the stories I have about Notams. I got a couple more I'll share with you here as time goes on. Good to see everybody today. Enjoy the day. It's sunny here in Northwest Ohio, and it's great to see everyone.